They told you everything began with the Big Bang, a single explosion, a flash of unimaginable energy, birthing space, time, and all that would ever exist. But what if that story is wrong, not incomplete, not misunderstood? Wrong. What if time didn't begin there at all? What if the Big Bang wasn't the start, but just a ripple in something far older, far stranger, far more terrifying? You were taught to imagine time as a line, a simple arrow moving forward from a single beginning. But what if that arrow is an illusion? What if there was no start, no edge, no before, because time itself is the thing that came later? This thought shatters the foundation of everything you believe. You see, we live in a reality where even the concept of before might not make sense, and that is where this story begins, not at the Big Bang, but in the silence before anything could even bang, before galaxies, before particles, before the first trembling of energy through space. There was nothing. Or was there? That's the first paradox, because in physics, nothing isn't empty. In fact, it might be the most unstable, most energetic thing there is. Quantum fields swirl in a vacuum. Particles flicker into and out of existence in trillionths of a second. In this nothing, there's noise, there's math, there's the potential for everything. But what if there was no quantum field yet? No vacuum, no space, no laws, no clocks. How do you measure before if time itself doesn't exist? You might imagine darkness, but darkness implies the absence of light, an idea that only makes sense within time. You might imagine a frozen void, empty and still. But stillness only exists in contrast to motion, and motion needs time. So here's the contradiction. We speak of the beginning of time as if it's a moment, one tick on some divine clock. But clocks tick within time. And if time didn't exist, neither did clocks. Neither did moments. Neither did before. And yet, something happened. Something changed. Something shifted. Because here we are. The universe is expanding. Space is stretching. Galaxies are racing away from one another as if repelled by an ancient explosion. Background radiation, cool and ghostly, whispers to us from nearly 14 billion years ago, hinting at a past too violent and brilliant to imagine. But those hints don't answer the deeper question. They only deepen the mystery. What could possibly exist before time itself? Some physicists call it a singularity, a point of infinite density and zero volume. But point is a geometric term, and geometry requires space. Infinite density implies mass and pressure, but these are words built inside time's framework. So again, we are trying to describe a place beyond description using the language of things that did not yet exist. And yet, something was. Maybe it was a brain in a higher dimensional space, colliding with another. Maybe it was an eternal quantum field collapsing into our universe. Maybe it was a fluctuation, tiny, random, formless, that somehow sparked time itself. Or maybe, just maybe, there was no before, no cause, no spark, because time didn't begin. It emerged. You might wonder, is it even possible for something to come from nothing? But maybe that's the wrong question. Maybe nothing doesn't mean what you think it means. In quantum mechanics, nothingness isn't empty. It's a sea of possibility. But that sea still exists in time. The rules still apply. So what? If the real question is this, can anything exist at all without time? Because if the answer is no, then the universe didn't start with a bang. It started with a birth of time, a transition from timelessness to ticking. But what does that even mean? How can we imagine a reality where cause and effect don't exist, where before and after have no meaning, where nothing changes because there is no change, and no when for it to change in? And here is where things get stranger still. There are theories, radical, beautiful, terrifying, that time is not fundamental, that it is not woven into the fabric of reality, but emerges from something deeper, something more abstract: entanglement, information, consciousness. And if time is emergent, it means the past didn't always exist. It was assembled, like memory, like story, and that changes everything. Because if time is an illusion, so is its beginning. Imagine this. Our universe, this grand, spiraling, galaxy-filled expanse, is not a bubble expanding into space, but a wave flowing out of a timeless ocean. Imagine that wave rippling across dimensions, collapsing probability into reality, and sculpting the illusion of past and future as it goes. And we, you, me, everything, are not beings in time, but patterns created by time. And if that's true, then what came before the universe may not be a thing at all. It may be a question without meaning, or worse, it may be a question with an answer we were never meant to understand. The Big Bang wasn't the beginning. It was the first crack in the silence. And what lies beyond that crack, before time, before space, before thought, remains sealed. Behind a wall no light can cross, no telescope can peer into, no mind can fully grasp. But that won't stop us from trying. Because deep inside, you is the same force that moved first, the same hunger to know. And it whispers, what was there before time? And that is where we begin. The universe, as we know it, is expanding. That much is certain. Stretching outward like an inflating balloon, it grows colder, quieter, and more distant with every passing second. We measure this expansion in the redshift of galaxies, in the cooling remnants of ancient light, the cosmic microwave background. We map this light like archaeologists mapping the dust of ancient ruins. It tells us a story, a beginning, a fire. 13.8 billion years ago, according to the models we've built, a moment of furious birth erupted from what we call a singularity, the Big Bang. It wasn't an explosion in space. It was an explosion of space. Not a fireball in the sky, but the sky itself being born in fire. Every speck of matter, every galaxy, every star, every thought you've ever had, was encoded in the heat of that blinding instant. Time itself, we're told, began there. With that first unfurling, but that image is comforting. Too comforting. We imagine it like a film starting from frame 1. But no one saw frame 1. And the film? It may have started in the middle. Because, here's the first crack in the cosmic myth. If the universe had a beginning, what existed just before that? And more importantly, what does it even mean to say before if time had not yet unfolded? The standard model of cosmology, grounded in Einstein's general relativity, gives us tools to peer back, almost, to the first moment. Space expands, galaxies drift, and radiation cools. It all fits. But when we reach the singularity, the equations break down. Gravity becomes infinite. Time shrinks to a point. Our math screams in protest. something's wrong. That's because singularities are not physical places. They are warning signs. They mark the boundary where our understanding ends, and still, we press onward. Cosmic inflation, a theory born in the late 20th century when scientists realized that the universe looked too smooth, too uniform. Galaxies scattered across space with eerie symmetry. Opposite ends of the universe, too far apart to have ever communicated, yet sharing the same temperature, the same structure. How? Inflation proposed an answer. In its first fractions of a second, the universe didn't just expand, it inflated, a sudden, incomprehensible expansion faster than the speed of light. A balloon blown up not gently, but in a single cosmic breath. This inflation smoothed the wrinkles, ironed out the chaos, and left behind the seeds of stars and galaxies. It's elegant, predictive. It matches the data, but it raises deeper questions, because inflation didn't happen in space. It created space. It didn't happen over time. It may have been the birth of time itself. And if that's true, what triggered it? That's where the cracks deepen. Imagine the early universe, dense and white-hot, not even milliseconds old. Quantum fluctuations ripple through the plasma, tiny pockets of slightly higher density. Over billions of years, those pockets grow into galaxies, stars, planets, you. But zoom further back, before the fluctuations, before the inflation, and what do you find? Silence, not darkness, not vacuum, not emptiness, because even these require time to exist. What you find is undefined, not a place, not a state, not a thing, just absence. But absence of what? Some theories suggest a pre-bang universe, a previous cosmos collapsing, bouncing, and birthing ours in the rebound. Others invoke eternal inflation, where bubble universes, like ours, form endlessly, each with their own laws of physics, each a flicker in the foam of a much larger multiverse. And still others say the Big Bang wasn't a bang at all, but a transition, a phase shift in a field, like water freezing into ice. Not an explosion, but a change in form. Whatever it wasn't the beginning. It was a crossing, a doorway. And that changes the story. Because if the universe is expanding, we must ask, into what? We say space stretches, but is it stretching into more space? Or is space creating itself as it goes? Is the universe finite, like a balloon surface, or infinite, like a never-ending canvas painting itself? Is there a beyond? Or is beyond just a trick of human thought, trying to box the infinite into a shape we can grasp? Every answer opens a deeper question. Where did the laws of physics come from? Did they exist before the universe? Or were they born with it, like rules in a new game? Can something create itself? Can a system give birth to its own boundaries? Philosophers once called time a river. But in this story, time is more like a fog, thickening, thinning, swirling with memory and prediction. Maybe time isn't even a real thing. Maybe it's a story told by particles as they interact, a measure of entropy, a symptom of change. And if time is a symptom, not a cause, then what caused the first cause? We are trapped in this question, not because it is unsolvable, but because we are bound by time. Every thought we have has a before and after. Every heartbeat, every word, every breath is a sequence. But what if the universe does not think in sequence? What if it is the sequence? Even in ancient times, humans sensed this puzzle. In creation myths, the gods always stand outside time, creating it like clay. In Vedic thought, Time is cyclical. In Abrahamic texts, God existed before time. But what does that mean? Can existence have no timeline? Can being have no beginning? We return again and again to the same riddle. If time began, what ticked the first tick? In a cold, high-energy state, with no particles, no mass, no direction, how do you define anything? Is the origin of the universe not a moment, but a transformation? A phase shift from timelessness to temporality? Imagine the universe as a canvas, still blank. Then imagine color exploding across it, not from a brush, but from the canvas itself deciding to become painting. Not from outside, but from within. This is not just physics. It is poetry. It is madness. It is the edge of human thought. And still, we ask, if the universe had a beginning, what was the trigger? Could there be something eternal? A field, a pattern, an equation that simply is, without time, without change, until suddenly it changes. Could symmetry itself be unstable, and that instability, the seed of all existence? If time had a start, then that start is the most violent, most profound transformation ever conceived. But if time had no beginning, if it is infinite, then we must ask why this moment exists. Why now? Why here? Why you? We stand at the edge of a cliff, staring into an ocean with no shore. Every law, every theory, every telescope brings us closer, but never across. And so we wonder. We question. What was there before time? And the silence answers only with more silence. The further you travel into the question of what came before time, the more you find yourself pulled toward the edges of known physics, into realms where the rules begin to bend and logic starts to unravel. The comfortable ideas of space, matter, and motion dissolve into something more primitive, more alien. It begins not with stars or galaxies, but with silence and compression, gravity so dense that light itself cannot flee. We begin not with creation, but with collapse. Imagine a black hole, not the monster lurking at the center of a galaxy, but the concept itself, a place where space-time folds so violently that every direction points inward. A gravitational wound so deep it pierces the fabric of reality. Within this singularity, all known laws of physics collapse into contradiction. Time, as we understand it, doesn't move forward. It halts. And yet, black holes are not merely cosmic trash compactors. They are, in many ways, laboratories of the impossible. Their event horizons, their boundaries, are not walls, but mirrors. They show us what happens when information is stretched to its limits. When entropy, the measure of disorder, of forgotten detail, reaches its apex. Entropy is often imagined as chaos, but that's not quite right. Entropy is memory loss. It's the universe forgetting what it once knew. The more entropy increases, the more detail is erased. And time only moves because entropy increases. That's why we remember the past, but never the future. Because the universe writes history in one direction, forward, toward greater forgetting. But now, pause. If time depends on entropy, then what was entropy doing before time began? Was there a moment when nothing had yet been? Forgotten? A moment of perfect order? That moment, if it existed, would be terrifying, because it would be a state so low in entropy that no chaos, no change, no motion could exist, and no time. But what could cause such a state? Some physicists argue that the Big Bang was this moment of minimal entropy, the most ordered instant in the history of everything. a perfect lattice of pure potential. But why? Why would the universe begin in a state so improbable, so balanced, that even the tiniest ripple could reshape eternity? This is the puzzle Roger Penrose tried to answer with the theory of conformal cyclic cosmology, a model in which the end of one universe becomes the beginning of another. Each universe grows old, expands, and cools. In the far, far future, black. Holes evaporate through Hawking radiation. Matter decays. Stars burn out. Eventually, all mass is gone. All information lost. And when nothing is left to measure time, time ceases to exist. In this timeless void, this cold infinity, the conditions are just right for a new universe to arise, not from a bang, but from the end of forgetting. The birth of low entropy. Once again, a new cycle, a new beginning, a new illusion of time. But before we chase infinity, let's dive smaller, much smaller. Beneath the skin of matter, beneath the particles we once thought indivisible, quarks, leptons, bosons, lies a deeper fabric. One not made of particles at all, but of possibilities. Quantum foam, they call it. A frothing sea of uncertainty, so chaotic, so unstable, that it defies observation. Imagine space-time as a smooth sheet, stretched out beneath the stars. Now, zoom in again, and again. Eventually, you no longer see a smooth sheet. You see waves, bubbles, tunnels of space folding into themselves, appearing and disappearing in flashes of impossible geometry. At the Planck scale, the smallest scale of length imaginable, space-time becomes pixelated, discrete, foam-like. Reality, it seems, is not continuous. It is granular. And within that granularity may lie the answer to our greatest question. Because quantum mechanics, unlike classical physics, does not demand cause and effect in the traditional sense. It does not move neatly from A to B. In fact, the idea of before and after becomes murky. Particles can exist in superpositions. They can tunnel through barriers. They can affect one another instantly across vast distances. Entanglement breaks the narrative flow we depend on. What if the birth of time was not a single event, but the collapse of a quantum superposition? What if reality, our reality, was one of many outcomes suspended in a timeless probability cloud? And when the wave function collapsed, time was born? This is where cosmology begins to whisper the language of quantum mechanics. The very fabric of the early universe may have existed in a timeless, probabilistic haze. No direction, no before, no after. Just a vast canvas of possible universes, each one suspended, frozen, like a library of unopened books. And then, one book opened. A transition, not a bang. Not an explosion, but a choice, though not conscious, a spontaneous selection of one reality from many. This is echoed in quantum cosmology, where physicists like James Hartley and Stephen Hawking proposed the no-boundary condition. According to their model, the universe has no beginning in time as we imagine it, no sharp edge. Instead, time behaves like a spatial dimension near the origin, as if the Big Bang wasn't the first moment of time, but the south pole of time, smooth, round, finite, yet unbounded. Like standing at the bottom of a valley, with no edge, no cliff, no singularity. Just curve. But again, if time is a curve, what lies outside it? Perhaps nothing. And maybe that's the point. In quantum field theory, nothingness is not empty. The vacuum hums. Virtual particles pop into existence, annihilate, and vanish. They do this constantly, even in the space between atoms. Some call it the zero-point field, a seething ocean of potential. Could the universe have tunneled out of this vacuum fluctuation? Could time itself be the result of quantum tunneling, where a universe, against all odds, burst through the barrier of nothingness into being? This isn't science fiction. It's part of quantum cosmogenesis, a framework where universes are not born from explosions, but from probabilities resolving. And now, shift scales again. Dark matter. We cannot see it. We cannot touch it. But we know it is there. It binds galaxies together, holds them in spinning orbits far too fast for visible matter alone. It outweighs normal matter 5 to 1, and yet it has never been directly detected. What is it? Some say particles, weakly interacting massive particles, or WIMPs. Others say axions, or sterile neutrinos. Some theories stretch further, suggesting it is not matter at all, but the residue of higher dimensions, a fingerprint left behind by a brain-world collision, a cosmic accident in a higher reality, bleeding into ours. What if dark matter is a memory of what existed before the universe, as we know it? What if it holds structure from a past iteration, echoing in the present like bones beneath new skin? And then, darker still, dark energy. The force that is not just holding the universe together, but tearing it apart. Galaxies are not only moving away from each other, they are accelerating, as if space itself is being pushed outward by some invisible pressure, a cosmological constant, a vacuum energy, a ghost in the equations. We don't know what it is, but it acts like an anti-gravity. It doesn't clump. It spreads, and it may point to the deepest truth of all, that the vacuum, the empty space, is not empty at all. It is alive. It has structure. It has tension. And in that tension may lie the key to understanding why time began, and why it flows the way it does. Because maybe the vacuum wanted to change. Maybe the field that defines our reality was once trapped in a false vacuum, an unstable state, balanced on the edge, and like a ball resting on a hilltop, it eventually rolled. Not because of time, but because it created time in the fall. This is vacuum decay theory, and if it's true, then the universe is a bubble of lower energy, expanding into a higher energy false vacuum. A bubble where time exists, a bubble we call home. But what lies outside that bubble? Nothing or everything? Every theory. Black, holes, entropy, quantum foam, inflation, vacuum decay, brings us closer to the same haunting edge. That time may be emergent, not fundamental, not eternal, but a shadow, a symptom, a song that starts only when there is something to change. And if time is emergent, then so is causality, so is sequence, so is memory, so is life. And yet, here you are, thinking, asking, existing all. Because somewhere, somehow, the void gave way to rhythm. The silence shattered. The stillness moved. Time began, and the question still echoes. What? Was there? Before? You've journeyed through quantum foam, black holes, and entropy. You've heard the hum of a vacuum that isn't empty and felt the weight of time's illusion pressing against your skin. But to ask what came before time is to invite paradox. And the deeper you go, the more the universe begins to whisper riddles that refuse to resolve. Take the Fermi paradox. If the universe is infinite, If the stars have been burning for billions of years, birthing billions of planets, then where is everyone? Where are the civilizations older than ours? The megastructures, the signals, the trails of cosmic engineering? Why does the sky stay so quiet? There's silence. A deep, unsettling silence. Some say it's because we're the first. Others say it's because we're already surrounded, but unable to recognize the signs. Some even suggest we are in a zoo, watched but never touched. But there's a darker possibility, that the silence isn't just local. It's cosmic. Maybe civilizations don't rise often because the conditions of reality itself are rare. Maybe the universe is not friendly to intelligence. Maybe this timeline, your timeline, is the outlier. Or worse, maybe we're alone because intelligence is not meant to last. Every time something begins to awaken, it self-destructs. Because entropy doesn't just tear stars apart, it dismantles meaning, memory, pattern, consciousness. And maybe time itself is simply the slow death of coherence. This is not just a biological worry, it's a cosmological one. Now imagine this. You are not a person, not even a body, but a mind floating in a void. A Boltzmann brain. A random fluctuation in an otherwise dead universe. For a single moment, the atoms arrange themselves into a working consciousness. A brain. A dream. And then, gone. It's absurd. And yet, statistically, if time is infinite and particles keep dancing forever, this scenario becomes not only possible, but likely. Far more likely than a whole universe evolving billions of years just to produce you. Why construct galaxies, stars, cells, bloodstreams, and thought, when the same thought could arise from chance alone? If you are more likely to be a fleeting brain in the void than the product of evolutionary history, then how can you trust your memories, your world, your reality? This is the heart of the Boltzmann brain paradox. A universe that runs on probability must eventually imagine itself. And the imagined version, brief, unstable, and alone, may vastly outnumber the real ones. But here's the horror. If you were a Boltzmann brain, you wouldn't know. You'd still feel real, and the clock would still tick, unless it already stopped. Then there's the simulation hypothesis. What if everything you see, this universe, this timeline, this unfolding dream of galaxies and gravity, is code? What if you are not in a universe at all, but a simulation of one? If intelligence can create simulations indistinguishable from reality, and if such simulations are easy to run, then we're almost certainly inside one. Because simulated realities would vastly outnumber base reality. Your birth, your breath, your body. All lines of code. All equations ticking forward on a substrate you'll never see. And yet, it feels real, doesn't it? You still bleed. You still break. You still love. The pain is not lessened by the possibility of illusion. The longing still cuts deep. If this is a simulation, then the programmer is silent, the purpose unknown. Maybe the simulation is a test, maybe it's an archive, maybe it's a prison, or maybe it's just art, a rendering of possibilities, a curiosity, or maybe it's all a misunderstanding. Because even the simulation hypothesis depends on time, on processing, on ticks of a clock. What if there is no clock? Now open your mind wider, wider than light, wider than logic. Consider the multiverse, a field of bubbles, each one a universe, each one with different laws of physics, some without gravity, some with no time, some that collapse instantly, some that last forever. In the theory of eternal inflation, space never stops expanding. Our universe is just one pocket where inflation slowed down enough to form matter. But beyond our bubble, the inflation continues. New universes bubble up endlessly, each a separate reality sealed from the rest. In this model, there is no single before, because the process never began. It simply is. The multiverse is not a place. It is a condition, a living equation, blooming universes like flowers in an infinite field. And here's the catch. If the multiverse is real, then there are infinite versions of you. Infinite Earths, some nearly identical, some twisted beyond imagination. On one Earth, you never watch this video. On another, you are not human. On another, you never were. You are not a person. You are a probability wave, a ripple in the sea of what could be. But if every possible version of you exists, then what does your choice mean? What does your pain mean? What does love mean if it echoes endlessly through copies and echoes of echoes? The multiverse comforts, and it haunts because it removes the center. It says, this world is not the world, just a world. And if there are infinite timelines, then perhaps this one is not special. But maybe the meaning isn't in being unique. Maybe the meaning is in being aware, in knowing this might all vanish, in feeling the ache of impermanence. Because even if there are other yous, you are the only one here now. And that means something. Now imagine this. Time is not flowing forward. It's static, like a block. Every moment, past, present, and future, coexisting like pages in a book. This is block universe theory, a four-dimensional reality where change is an illusion. You do not move through time. You are fixed in time. Your birth, your death, your memories, all existing simultaneously. Your sense of now is simply where your consciousness is pinned in the block. But what pins it? And why this moment? Why now? Now. Ask a stranger question. What if time is a loop? Not metaphorically, not mythically, but literally. What if the universe is cyclical? What if everything you are living has happened before? Will happen again? In bounce cosmology, the universe expands, then contracts. The Big Bang is not the first explosion, but the latest rebound. You're not watching a movie. You're watching a loop. And the you that is asking these questions has asked them before and will again. But will you remember? Entropy suggests not. Memory fades. Information dissolves. The past is rewritten. Each loop loses something. And yet, something remains. A rhythm, a shape, a question. The question, what was there before time? Some say causality must always have a root, a prime mover, a first cause. But quantum physics doesn't always agree. In some interpretations, particles affect each other in loops of correlation, not clear lines of cause and effect. A particle in the present can influence the past, or the future can decide the outcome of the past. Retrocausality, they call it, and if true, it breaks the most sacred rule of all, that the past causes the present. Because what if the present also causes the past? Now, the mind begins to bend. Because maybe time doesn't flow. Maybe it echoes. Maybe every moment is a chord, played in resonance with others. across a medium we don't yet understand. What if the Big Bang wasn't the start, but a note, and time is the song, and you are the ear, the listener, the interpreter? This leads us to the final veil, the philosophy of time itself. Some thinkers argue that time is not something that exists, but something we impose, that our minds, desperate to organize change, invent. The idea of time, that animals live in a blur of sensation, that we, with memory and language, invented past and future, and that's why we suffer. Because we imagine endings, we imagine before and after, and in doing so, we are the only creatures on this planet haunted by death. Because time gives meaning, and it takes it away. So what was there before time? Maybe the better question is, what is there without it? Without time, there is no decay, no fear, no longing, no separation. Without time, everything simply is. But you, born inside the rhythm, cannot escape it. You measure your life in seconds. You measure your worth in days. You carry regret in years, and you chase hope in futures that may never come. But somewhere, beyond the physics, beyond the math, beyond even the silence, there may be a reality where time is not needed, where existence does not unfold, but simply exists, and maybe that's what came before time. A state so complete, so undivided, so whole, that it could not move, could not change, could not become, until it did. And that becoming, that first ripple, that first breath, is the moment we call the Big Bang. Not a bang, but a shiver. The first symptom of time, and here you are, feeling it still. That tremble, that question, that echo in your bones that refuses to be silenced. What was there before time? And in your asking, perhaps you bring the answer closer. Because maybe that answer isn't a fact. Maybe it's not a theory. Maybe it's you. You were born into this universe like a breath, a flicker, a ripple on the surface of something older than memory. You opened, your eyes inside a system already spinning, already ticking, already unfolding. You never chose to arrive in this moment. But here you are, curled inside time like a wave caught mid-collapse. And whether you realize it or not, everything you feel is a reaction to time. You wake each morning with the weight of yesterday. You plan with the hope of tomorrow. You fear endings. You crave beginnings. You remember. You regret. You long. You age. Time defines you more than your name, more than your history. It's the silent sculptor of everything you are. And yet, you've never seen it, never touched it, never proven it. You only feel it. But what if that feeling is the first illusion? What if you're not aging through time, but being carried by it? What if time isn't something you move through, but something that moves through you? This is where the emotional gravity begins to build, because the deeper the science goes, the more it tears away the stories we've built. It doesn't just ask where the universe came from. It asks whether yourself, your memories, your meaning are real, or temporary, or even necessary. And that's terrifying, because we want to matter. We want the story of me to stretch forward like a path. We want to believe our thoughts aren't just noise, but echoes that travel beyond death. But what if consciousness is tied to time like a flame is tied to oxygen? What if, without time, there is no thought, no self, no you? There are theories, serious ones, that suggest your sense of identity is a byproduct of entropy, that your awareness of time is not an insight into the universe, but a glitch of chemistry, that your past is not real, just recalled, that your future is not open, just unknown, and that means you may never truly escape the present, not because time is a river pulling you forward, but because your mind is a lighthouse, spinning in the fog of probability, lighting up only the places your biology allows. You think you are walking through time, but maybe you're just standing still, while time unfolds around you. What does that mean for love? For grief? For memory? If time is not real, then neither is loss, but neither is reunion. So much of what makes us human is based on the belief in before and after, on the ache of separation, on the hope of return. If time had no beginning, then maybe nothing was ever truly separated. And if time had a beginning, then maybe every goodbye is permanent. Which one is worse? Maybe the most unbearable truth is not that time ends, but that it never began. Because if time never began, then death isn't an end. It's a return, not to dust, but to silence. Not the silence of space, the silence of before. But here's what no theory can take from you: the experience of now, right now. You are watching this. Right now, you are breathing. Right now, the stars exist. That might be the most sacred thing in all of physics. Not the question of origins, but the miracle of attention. You are aware, and maybe that's the real mystery, because if the cosmos was silent for billions of years before thought, why now? Why are you thinking now? Why are you asking this question? What if you are not a bystander in the cosmic unfolding? What if you are the reason it unfolded? Not in the mythic sense, not as a chosen being, but as a necessary outcome. A lens, a mirror, a consciousness without which the universe has no story at all. That's the horror buried beneath the science. Not that we're small, but that we matter more than we want to. Because if time is meaningless without someone to feel it, then you give time its meaning, not the other way around. And so, we reach the precipice of emotion. We stand before the void, not as victims of entropy, but as its translators. We are the moment becoming aware of itself. We are the past folded into the present, trying to see the shape of what never had a beginning. You, here, now, and that's the answer that haunts. Not the equations, not the theories, but the fact that, out of all the possible versions of space, time, and matter, you are the one asking why. What was there before time? What if the answer is you? What if the end is the beginning? We speak of the universe as something heading somewhere, toward entropy, toward heat, death, toward stillness. And maybe it is. Maybe the stars will all go out. Maybe the black holes will all evaporate. Maybe every atom will drift so far from every other that the very notion of structure becomes meaningless. This is the heat death of the universe. The cold, empty future, where time no longer has direction, because nothing changes. No movement, no memory, no life, just particles frozen in eternal distance. But what if that isn't the end? What if it's a reset? Some physicists believe that time is not eternal in one direction, but cyclical, that once the universe reaches its maximum entropy, something happens. A reversal, a rebirth. that the death of time gives rise to time again. Imagine entropy as a pendulum. At the peak of its arc, it pauses, silent, weightless, suspended in equilibrium. But then, it falls again. Forward becomes backward. Disorder becomes order. The ashes become fire. It's called the Janus point, a proposal that the Big Bang was not the beginning of time, but the middle. That from this singular moment, two universes exploded outward in opposite temporal directions, one heading toward our future, the other toward its own. In this theory, the arrow of time is not absolute. It's relative. In one universe, entropy increases in one direction. In the other, it increases in the other. And each side feels like the forward flow of time. Could that other universe still exist? Right now, could it be unwinding next to ours, like a mirror made of reversed memory? If so, then maybe time didn't begin with a bang. It split, and everything we know, all our laws, all our constants, all our particles, are echoes of a symmetry breaking at the edge of nothing. Two arrows, one point. And you? You are traveling, one of them. But if time can flow in two directions, what happens when it meets itself again? What happens when all expansion collapses? What happens when the wave of the universe returns to stillness? Maybe it doesn't vanish. Maybe it remembers. Maybe the universe is like a breath. Inhale, exhale. Beginning, end. Time, reverse. And in the space between those breaths, reality pauses. Imagine galaxies collapsing, not in fire, but in silence. Imagine light falling inward, not as destruction, but as memory being folded. Imagine the past running backward, not replayed, but unwound. Every thought, every heartbeat, every tear, returning to stillness. And when everything is still enough, a second spark, a new ripple, a new illusion of time. We think of time as a line, but maybe it's a loop. Maybe the Big Bang was not the first moment, but the most recent one. And the next Big Bang? It's already happened. We're just on the other side. That's the grand perspective, that we are part of something timeless masquerading as time, that we are not the product of a start, but of a rhythm, a cycle, a cosmic heartbeat, echoing through dimensions we can't see. And maybe there never was a before, because maybe the question itself, what was there before time, is like asking what's north of the North Pole. There is no direction. There is only emergence. There is only this and now. You exist not as a fluke, not as a footnote, but as a manifestation of the very thing the universe has always done: unfold, transform, awaken. And somewhere, beneath all the paradox, all the equations, all the broken clocks and frozen stars, is the one thing that may survive it all. Not matter, not energy, but awareness. Because even as time ends, begins, loops, and dies, awareness remains. And if that's true, then maybe time is not what gives rise to consciousness. Maybe consciousness is what gives rise to time. And if that is true, then this question, what was there before time, was not asked by accident. It was always waiting. Waiting for a voice, a mind, a you, to ask it. And in asking it, you've brought it closer to being answered. Or maybe you've become the answer itself. So now you've walked the long road. You've traveled through the science and the silence, past the limits of black holes and the illusions of memory, past entropy's unraveling and the multiverse's infinite reflections. You've stood at the edge of nothing and tried to peer beyond it, not with your eyes, but with your questions. And now, you return to where it all began. What was there before time? It's a question that cannot be measured. It cannot be answered in data. It doesn't fit into telescopes or equations or experiments, but it does fit in you, because you are the only thing in this universe that knows how to ask. Everything else obeys. The planets spin, the galaxies drift, the atoms follow their paths. But you disobey. You wonder. You doubt. You pause mid-breath to ask, why? That may be the most powerful force in the cosmos. Not gravity, not light, but the mind that sees gravity, that measures light, that stops to ask where it all came from and what it all means. If time had a beginning, then your birth was not just a biological accident. It was the moment the universe began to know itself. And if time had no beginning, then you are a ripple in something eternal, something that never needed to start because it never needed to end. Either way, you are not outside the mystery. You are the mystery. And so, the question echoes again. What was there before time? Not stars, not atoms, not matter, not memory, only potential. A canvas without form, a question without words, and then a flicker, a shift, a becoming. And here you are, not as a conclusion, not as a consequence, but as a continuation, a living question mark painted across the cosmos. So, what do you do now? What do you do with all this? You carry it. You hold it like a flame in the dark. You remember that behind every moment, every laugh, every loss, every heartbeat, there is a silence older than the sky. A silence that chose to break, to form, to risk. You are part of that risk. And maybe that's the most sacred truth of all. That this isn't a simulation, or a glitch, or an accident. It's a story. And stories aren't measured by how they begin, or how they end, but by how deeply they are felt. So let yourself feel it. The awe, the confusion, the terror, the wonder. Let yourself not know, because maybe the not knowing is the point. Maybe mystery isn't the enemy of science. Maybe it's the engine. Maybe the universe was never meant to give you an answer. Maybe it was meant to give you a question, so powerful it would drive you to build telescopes, write equations, dream theories, and sit quietly at night wondering how anything could ever exist at all. And that's what you are now. Not just a person, not just a viewer. You are a vessel for wonder, and wonder is what happens when meaning and mystery meet. So take this moment with you, take it into your day, into your conversations, into your stillness. Let the echo of before time ripple in your chest. And when the world feels small, when the days feel fast, and the hours feel hollow, remember that you are walking inside a question older than light. And that question is still unfolding. Right now, with you. Before time, there was silence. Now, there is you. And after, only the universe knows. But maybe it's waiting to ask you. One final thought lingers, soft as breath, wide as everything. The universe is not a machine. It's not a map. It's not a prison. It's a question. And you are the answer still becoming real. So if you feel small, good, it means you understand. If you feel lost, perfect, it means you've stepped beyond the edge. And if you feel wonder, hold it, because that's the closest you'll ever come to touching what came before time. Now take one breath, and in that breath, know this: somewhere, far beyond stars and silence, another version of you is asking the same question. And maybe, just maybe, that's the answer. If this journey moved you, if it shook something loose in your thoughts, or sparked something quiet in your soul, don't let it end here. Subscribe for more deep, cinematic explorations into the mysteries that surround us and the ones that live within us. Like the video if it made you wonder, and tell us in the comments, what do you believe was there before time? We read every reply, because this channel isn't about giving answers, it's about building a place where we can ask better questions, together. So stay curious, stay brave, and remember, you are not just in the universe. The universe is in you.